Stick around because today I'm taking you through my 5 top tips for home buyers in Perth. Hi, I'm Simon Atkins, helping you buy and invest in Perth's brand new apartment market. So, number 1 on the list is rent vesting. So, rent vesting can work great if you're a first home buyer. Affordability issues often mean having to buy a property in an area that you don't really like. So, obviously, you don't want to go and live somewhere where you don't want to live. So rent vesting means that you can buy something that you can afford, but you can use that as a rental property. So you rent that out. So renting out the property means the tenant will pay most outgoings, and you'll also benefit from the tax deductions on that property. So you can then rent that out, and then you can rent somewhere where you'd rather live. So you get into the market by buying an investment, and then you lease the property out where you'd rather live. So obviously when you're buying a property yourself and you live in that property, you've got to pay the mortgage, you've got to pay the rates, which are water rates, council rates, insurances, and all those things that go with it as well. So this, obviously a lot of our outgoings attached to that. So this can be a really good way of having that in place. The tenant, as I mentioned, and the tax man help you pay for that. So in some cases it can cover all your outgoings, and on the other side of the equation you're just leasing out a property where you actually want to live in an area that you'd rather be or that's more convenient for you. Number 2, off the plan. So if you're a downsizer, first home buyer or investor, in fact any type of buyer at all, off the plan at the moment in Perth is giving you access to a property with just a deposit. So we're in that right part of the cycle where this can work really well. So you also get significant stamp duty savings from buying off the plan, so either pre-sales or during construction. So even more importantly, these off the plan purchases are helping you to use the market growth rather than that working against you. So buyers are settling on these properties after locking them in for periods such as a year or two, and settling with built-in increases in value at the time of settlement. So you can lock in the price with what's normally a 10% deposit, but can sometimes be less than that, and this allows you to access the growth in the market without full ownership. And then when you do settle, once you've got your finance sorted out or whatever else you need to do to line your ducks up, you can benefit from the increased price rather than suffering that increased price. Number 3 is finance. So in my opinion, it's a mistake to walk into your bank, which I hear some people do, and ask for a loan to buy a property, which is pretty kind of old-fashioned, I think. So if you get rejected, most people just give up, and I hear this time and time again. So what I've always done, and I've bought quite a lot of property over my time, and quite a few investments, and I've always used a finance broker. So they don't cost you anything, and they do the running around on your behalf, so I like that because I'm pretty lazy. And they often have access to over 30 banks and financial institutions which can give you an overview as to what these different places might or might not do for you. So don't just accept what one bank says. You can access more options through a broker, and of course if you want to stay with your existing bank, they can potentially do that, but they can also give you other options. So don't be disheartened if you just walk into one bank and they say, no, we're not prepared to lend you the money, because not all the banks have the same lending criteria. So number 4, Keystart. So this is a government-owned and backed home loan lender in Western Australia. So you can get a loan with as little as 2% deposit. Interest rates are a little bit higher than most conventional banks, but the low deposit requirement could be a big plus for you if you're trying to get into the market and you're trying to get your foot in there, and you're finding it difficult to get the deposit, because that's quite often the main hurdle for a lot of people, particularly first time trying to get into the market. So the idea is simply to help a certain demographic of the market to get into the property market, and then for you to refinance when you can. This isn't just for first home buyers, and there's a range of qualification criteria such as your age, property value, so you can't buy property over a certain value, and income limits as well. And you would need to apply directly to them, I believe, not via a broker in the case that I mentioned before, because I don't think brokers would get paid commissions for those. So I'll put a link in the description below if you'd like to look further into that option. So number 5, get into the market as soon as you can. If you aren't currently in the market in Perth and you're waiting for the market to come back because you think it might come backwards, or you're waiting to see what happens, then I'd be ditching those plans and I'd be doing whatever it took to get into the market now, because this market will continue growing for quite some time, as I've discussed in other videos. It's due to the many constraints, of course, on supply we have here across, not just in Perth in Australia, but particularly felt here in Perth. So be big, borrowing, stealing if you have to, but do whatever you can to get yourself into the market, because like I said, it's just going to keep going. So that's my top 5 tips to help you out in the current Perth property market. If you need anything further, my details are in the description below this video.